Beauty and the Beast. Long, long time ago, there was a girl whose name nobody knew. She was so pretty that everyone simply called her Beauty. Beauty's father traveled a lot, and he was to go to a place far, far away. Her two sisters asked for jewels, and all Beauty asked for was one single rose. He traveled through rain and snow and found a big empty castle where he slept. And inside the castle, when he woke up, he found the most beautiful rose bush he'd ever seen. He picked the nicest one for Beauty, happy that he'd make her smile. When, all of a sudden, there was a loud, earth-shaking roar, and a ferocious beast standing in front of him. "How dare you steal my roses?" the beast screamed, as Beauty's father tried to explain. But he wouldn't listen, and he wanted either him or his daughter to stay with him instead. Now, Beauty's father loved his daughters and loved seeing them every day. But the beast was scary, and the beast was right, for he had stolen. So he agreed. He came home bringing gifts and told his daughter about the beast. While her sisters were busy blaming Beauty, she packed her bags and was ready to leave. She liked the castle and everything inside, but she really feared the beast. With time, however, they started talking, and she started enjoying his company. Every night after dinner, he'd ask her to marry him. Still, every time he'd do that, she'd say no. In her room, she had a mirror that showed her family's house. And one day, she looked at it and saw that her father was very ill. She begged and begged the beast to let her see him. And he loved her, so of course he agreed, only if she came back in a week. Beauty had never been happier at home. Her father got better. Her sisters became nicer. And somehow, she stayed longer than a week. Then, one night, she dreamt of the beast, and he was really sick. She rushed to the castle right away, but she saw him on the floor, almost dead. "Oh no," she cried. "Please don't leave me. I love you." All of a sudden, his paws turned into hands, his mane into hair, his ugly face into a handsome prince. "I was once a vain prince," he said, "cursed to be a beast until I found true love." Beauty loved her prince. He loved her as well. From then on, they lived happily ever after.
Cinderella. Once there was a girl named Cinderella. She lived with a mean stepmother and two older stepsisters. Cinderella was beautiful and kind, and the stepmother and sisters were jealous. They were ugly and mean, so they put Cinderella to work. Cinderella worked morning, noon and night for them, doing all their chores. She swept the floor, did the laundry, cleaned the chimney, even rubbed feet. And when she was done working, she had to sleep in a closet under the stairs. She was very lonely and very sad, but she had a good heart. One day, the handsome prince invited all the young ladies in the land to a ball. He planned to choose a wife from one of them. Cinderella's two stepsisters couldn't wait to go, but they said maids like Cinderella weren't allowed. After the stepsisters dressed up and left, Cinderella cried. But her fairy godmother magically appeared and made magic. She turned a pumpkin into a golden coach, mice into horses, a rat into a coachman, and lizards into footmen. Then she turned Cinderella's rags into a beautiful gown, complete with a pair of delicate glass slippers. Cinderella was whisked off to the ball, but had to return by midnight, or else. At the ball, everyone was entranced by Cinderella, especially the prince. He danced and danced with Cinderella, and it got closer and closer to midnight. She had to break away from the prince and run, but lost a slipper going out the door. The prince chased her, but all he found was her slipper. She'd magically vanished. The prince kept the slipper and promised to marry the girl that fit it. The prince went from town to town and tried the slipper on every woman in the land. When the prince arrived at Cinderella's, the stepsisters pretended the slipper was theirs. One stepsister's foot was too long. She failed. One stepsister's foot was too wide. She failed. Cinderella wanted to try, but the stepsisters wouldn't let her. But the prince insisted Cinderella try, and the slipper fit perfectly. The prince married Cinderella, and they lived happily ever after. And the stepmom and stepsisters, they now work morning, noon and night for Cinderella. There was once a girl named Little Red. She always wore a red hood. Her granny was sick, so Red took tea and pie to make her feel better. She walked through the forest to Grandmother's house. But a hungry wolf followed her. He wanted the pie and tea and Little Red to eat. Out jumped the wolf, scaring Little Red, who screamed as loud as she could. This scared the wolf, who ran away and hid. He was worried the girl's scream would call a hunter, and hunters killed wolves. So the wolf ran ahead to Grandmother's house to fool Little Red. The wolf knocked on the door and pretended to be Little Red. When Grandmother opened the door, the wolf ate her. Then the wolf put on Grandmother's cap, Grandmother's glasses, and climbed into Grandmother's bed, pulling the covers up to his nose. There was a knock on the door. And Little Red called back, "It's me, Little Red." "Come in," cried the wolf. In came someone with a red hood and a big basket full of tea and pie. "What a deep voice you have," said the someone, whose voice sounded a little deep itself. The wolf replied, "The better to greet you with." Little Red moved closer to the bed. "My goodness, what big eyes you have." "The better to see you with," said the wolf. Then Little Red stepped even closer. "And what a big mouth you have with big teeth." The wolf jumped out of bed and gobbled up Little Red in one bite. Or at least what he thought was Little Red. A little girl without a red hood, but with a very big axe, came out from behind the door. She chopped the wolf in half with one stroke, freeing Grandmother and a hunter who was wearing Little Red's hood and pretending to be her as part of the trap. The moral of the story: don't judge a red hood by what it covers.
Rapunzel. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, lived a man and his pregnant wife. They had wanted a baby for a long, long time, and were happy they were about to have one. The wife's belly started growing, and they started preparing for the little baby to arrive. She built it wooden toys. She sewed it baby clothes, and they painted its room in the most beautiful colors. One day, the wife noticed Rapunzel plants in the garden right next to theirs. She craved for them that day, she craved for them that night, and the next day she craved some more. The husband loved her more than anything in the world, and he wanted to see her smile. So he climbed over the tall wall into the garden and brought back a few plants for his wife. She was as happy as she could be, and she ate them, so he did it again the next night. But as it often happens, when you take without asking, this time the husband got caught. The enchantress whose plants he had stolen was mad and filled with wrath. He begged, and she said she'd forgive him if he gave her his unborn baby in return. Of course he didn't want to, for he loved that baby, but there was nothing he could do. Once the little girl was born, they kissed her goodbye, and the enchantress took her home. She named her Rapunzel, and Rapunzel grew into a beautiful girl with blue eyes and golden hair. The enchantress was jealous, so she locked her away in a tower with no doors nor stairs. There was only one small window in Rapunzel's room, and each day the enchantress came, she'd call out to the girl to let her long hair down, so she could climb up and see her again. One hot summer day, a handsome prince walked by the tall, dark tower. He heard a beautiful song and looked around, but could not see the girl who sang it. He fell in love with the voice, so he came back the next day and the day after that, and on and on. But the only thing he saw, a month or so later, was the enchantress and the long golden hair. He came back that evening, called out to Rapunzel, just like he'd seen the enchantress do.
Rapunzel.
He climbed up the golden locks, saw the beautiful girl, and asked her to be his wife. Rapunzel was scared of the enchantress, so she kissed him and asked him to leave. The prince did so, but he came back the next evening, and did so every evening since. The enchantress knew nothing for a long, long time, but one day she found out the truth. She cut off Rapunzel's hair and sent her out to the woods, and awaited in the small, dark room. That evening the prince climbed up the tower, but saw the enchantress there. She was filled with rage as she uttered the scariest words he'd ever heard. "You'll never see her again!" He wanted to find her, he wanted to see her, so he leaped through the window at once. The fall blinded him completely, but he got up and walked, for he had to search for his princess. He searched and searched, walking blind and alone, for months, and then for years. And one day he heard a song he knew, a song he had heard long, long ago. He ran towards the voice, and into his loved one's arms, her surprised tears healing his eyes. And the prince and Rapunzel, and their 2 little children, lived happily for the rest of their lives.
Snow White. There once was a girl more beautiful than fresh fallen snow. Her name was Snow White. Her father was the king, and her mother the queen. But her mother died when Snow was young. And her father married a new queen, a very beautiful and jealous queen. Each morning, she asked her magic mirror who was the most beautiful. Each morning, the magic mirror said, "The queen." But one morning, the mirror said Snow White was the most beautiful. Angry with jealousy, the queen had her huntsman take Snow White to the forest to kill her. But the huntsman could not kill Snow White and left her in the forest. In the forest, there lived 7 dwarfs in a tiny cottage. 7 dwarfs found her crying and brought her back to their home. There, Snow cooked and cleaned for them. But the queen talked to her magic mirror again. She found out she was still not the most beautiful, and Snow was still alive. Disguising herself as an old peddler, the queen went to the dwarves' home. She sold Snow White a poisoned comb. But the dwarves came back in time to save Snow. For a second time, the queen disguised herself as a farmer's wife. She sold Snow her most poisonous thing, a red apple. When Snow bit the apple, she began choking and fell to the ground. The dwarves arrived, but they were too late. Snow was dead. Saddened, they put Snow into a crystal coffin, so all could see her beauty. Time passed, and a prince, riding through, saw Snow White in her coffin. In putting his hand to the glass, the coffin was jarred and fell. It shattered, and the piece of poison apple was coughed from Snow's throat. Suddenly, the girl was alive. She and the prince married. Snow's stepmother found that there was a new queen that was more beautiful than her. She rushed to see who this new rival was, and Snow White recognized her. The evil queen was made to dance all night in a pair of glowing hot iron shoes until she dropped dead. Snow White lived a long and happy life ever after. The Little Mermaid. One quiet day, deep inside the big blue ocean, a little mermaid woke up with a big smile on her face. It was her 15th birthday, and that was a big deal, for she was to swim out to the surface for the very first time. She rushed up and took her first deep breath of air. She saw the sun and the boats and one very handsome human. But all of a sudden, the waves grew bigger and tipped his boat over. "Oh no!" screamed the little mermaid as she swam towards him. She dragged him onto the shore and quickly swam back underwater. But she wished she could stay, for she had just fallen in love. She thought of him all the time and had to see him again. So the next day, she swam straight to the Sea Witch's door. "Can you give me legs?" she begged as the Sea Witch laughed. She handed her a potion, but not before telling her the price. "You give me your voice and your mermaid soul," she said. "But worry not, you'll get a human one as soon as you marry your one true love." It sounded so dangerous, but the little mermaid didn't care. She drank up the potion, and the very next morning, she woke up on land with legs. She slowly started walking and soon learned to dance. The humans saw her beautiful dancing and came to her right away. As they danced, he told her he was in love with the girl who saved his life. She wanted to scream, "That was me," but she couldn't without a voice. She lost her loved one and her soul. She sat by the sea and cried. A sea snail swam by and told her, however, that there was still time. "Kill the human and you'll get your soul back," it whispered. But the little mermaid knew she wasn't going to kill anyone. "Your heart might be broken, but it's still good," the snail went on. "You can become a spirit of air's daughter if you'd want." What could she do? She agreed, and she was lifted to the skies. She watched over her loved one and kept him safe, and that made her smile.
The Frog Prince. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful princess, the most spoiled princess that had ever lived. She had a golden dress, a golden crown, a golden plate, and a golden bed. Her favorite thing of all was her small golden ball. She played with it in the garden for hours, bouncing it off the ground. But one day it bounced too far away, out of the garden, into the woods, down the old well. "Oh no!" the princess cried, as she ran to it and saw how deep it was. What was she to do now? I can go down the well and get it for you." She heard a strange, squeaky voice. She looked around the woods, but no one was there, except for one small, green, ugly frog sitting on top of the well. "But what will I get in return?" it smiled. "Anything!" yelled the princess, offering her dresses, her jewels, and her pearls. But the frog didn't wear dresses, nor jewels, nor pearls, so it asked for something else instead. "I want to live with you and be your friend, eat in your golden plate, and sleep in your golden bed." And the princess agreed, for she really wanted her ball back. So the frog spread out its legs and hopped into the deep well, splashing the water all around, and came up quickly back again with the golden ball in its tiny hands. The princess was overjoyed. She jumped on her feet, grabbed the ball, and ran away, forgetting all about the promise she had made. Dinner came at the princess's home, and she joined her father and sisters on the table. But just as they were about to start, they heard 3 knocks at the door. "I'm here, dear princess," she heard a familiar squeaky voice. "I'm here to live with you and be your friend, just like you promised." The king heard that and scolded his daughter, for he believed a promise had to be kept. So she opened the door, and just as she did, the small green frog hopped inside the castle. It was seated right next to her, and it ate out of her golden plate, just as promised. But as night fell, and it asked to be brought up to her bed, the princess could not take it anymore. "A dirty, disgusting frog in a princess's bed?" she screamed in anger. She picked up the frog and threw it to the wall. In the blink of an eye, the frog disappeared. The princess rubbed her eyes as she saw the handsome, beautiful prince sitting in its place. "I was enchanted by an evil witch," he explained, rubbing his head where it had hit the wall. "A long time ago. But you have somehow broken the spell." They fell in love that summer and got married that fall, and moved to the prince's beautiful castle. The princess still had her golden ball, but now their children were playing with it in the garden. And they lived happily ever after, forever thankful to the king.
There was once a prince who had no princess. He had a money tree, an ice cream bush, and even singing soap, but no princess. So the queen had all the princesses come. There was Princess Happy and Princess Sad, Princess Smelly and Princess Glad, Princess Smart and Princess Dumb. There was even a princess who sucked her thumb. Then the queen had a princess contest. First they had the dinner test. The girls sat down at a giant table, and on the table was a giant feast.
Yum.
Half the girls burped and talked with their mouths full. These girls were sent home. They did not eat like princesses. Next came the singing test. Half the girls sang so badly they broke the windows and were sent home. They did not sing like princesses. Then came the sleep test. The princesses went to sleep in soft beds, but under each bed was a pea. The princesses woke after a good night's sleep and were sent home. They did not sleep like princesses. all but one princess, who was very, very tired. She couldn't sleep all night. "Something kept me awake," she said. The queen cried, "You are the perfect princess for my son." The queen rolled her eyes. And the prince and the princess lived happily ever after.
A farmer had 3 sons and 40 acres of fields. But every year on midsummer, every last plant on his land was eaten. The farmer sent his 3 sons out to guard the field the next year. The oldest son, Bartholomew, was very tall and very thin. That night, he heard a scream and ran from the field. The middle son, Otis, was fat and lazy. When he heard a scream, he ran from the field. The third and youngest son, Boots, was good-looking. Out in the field, Boots heard the scream, but didn't run. Then, speeding over the horizon like a comet, came a horse. A horse so beautiful, it shone like the moon. On its back was a bronze saddle, and tied to it a bronze suit of armor. The horse began eating the crops in the field. Boots had to stop the horse, magical or not, from eating his father's crops. He reached into his pocket and found a lump of sugar. The horse ate it and left. But the horse left behind the bronze saddle and armor. Boots buried the things in the field. But the next year, the horse came back. Only Boots stood guard. He brought sugar. And the horse left behind a silver saddle with silver armor. The next year, it was a gold saddle with golden armor. A year later, the king said that whoever would marry his beautiful daughter must climb a glass mountain to win her. The princess sat on the mount with 3 gold apples in her lap. Whoever took the apples would win the princess and half the kingdom. Of course, everyone came to try, but none of them could climb the glass mountain without slipping back down. Barty tried and fell flat on his face. Otis tried and fell flat on his butt. Neither brother would let Boots try. If we couldn't do it, how could you? But then a rider in bronze armor, sitting upon a bronze saddle, on the most beautiful horse, rode towards the glass mountain. He got a third of the way up before turning back. The princess saw this and threw an apple to the rider. The horse and rider returned for a second try, this time in silver armor on a silver saddle. They rode halfway up, then turned back. The princess threw him a second apple. On the third try, the rider was in golden armor on a gold saddle and rode all the way up the side of the glass mountain. He took the third apple and then rode down, with the princess behind him. Who was this rider who had won the hand of the princess? Lo and behold, it was Boots. And that's how Boots came to marry the princess. The red shoes. Once upon a time, a pretty girl lived in a land not far away. She had one pair of shoes made out of wood, boringly plain and gray. They hurt her little feet. They made it hard to walk, yet she never ever cried. Then one fine day she got a box with the most beautiful red shoes inside. She put the shoes on and ran up to her mommy, who was very, very ill. She didn't take them off that day or that night, and thought she never will. Her mommy passed away a few days later, and the girl was very sad. An old, large lady took her in, gave her a new home and a bed. The girl went to school to learn to read and write, and she went to church to pray, but she kept thinking of the shiny red shoes that the old lady had thrown away. As time went by, the pretty little girl grew and grew and grew. Her new boring shoes got small and old, and the lady took her to get some new. Now, the old lady had gotten older, and her sight had gotten bad, so the girl knew she wouldn't notice if the shoes she picked were red. And once again she had red shoes and took them off only at night. She even put them on for church, which, of course, was not all right. She knew it was disrespectful. She knew it was bad, and she knew that people stared, yet she wore them always, week after week. It wasn't like she cared. But then one Sunday, a bearded soldier waited at the church's door. He whispered something about the vain girl's shoes, and they started dancing on the floor. They danced and danced. She danced along. They danced in church and out. She didn't want to, but she couldn't stop. She could only pout. They danced all day, they danced all night, and then they danced some more. She was exhausted, but somehow managed to dance to the executioner's door. "Take them off!" she screamed in pain. "Even if you have to cut off my feet!" She wanted them off. She wanted them to stop, so she could lay, or at least sit. And so he did, but the two red shoes continued to dance away. The tired girl knew it was time to go to church and pray, and pray, and pray. She walked slowly, a crutch in each hand. She walked the whole day, maybe more, but she couldn't enter the church as her red shoes were dancing in front of the door. She tried the next week, and then again, but she could never get inside. She became a maid at the pastor's home, hoping to repent before she died. One Sunday, as always, they all went to church, but the girl stayed in her room. She prayed as an angel appeared in the light, surrounded by flowers in bloom. He had heard her repent and knew it was honest, so he brought the church there. The girl was lifted towards the sky, happy to see her feet finally bare.